the construction of our new home started. My husband unfortunately lost his job. He had agreed to contribute half of the mortgage, even considering taking on part-time work, but ultimately did not follow through with finding employment. Upon the completion of our new house, my husband proposed something quite daring. I've chosen to gift this house to my lovely niece as a wedding present. If you disagree with my idea, we can simply purchase another house. We should end our marriage right away. Surprised by his secret, I quickly agreed to divorce if that's what he wanted. John grinned, believing he had succeeded. After swiftly filing for divorce, he inquired about the division of property, which caused a noticeable shift in his attitude once I revealed that I knew his secret. With the help of another person, his original plan veered off course, resulting in a remarkable turn of events. We had been married for 3 years. Next year, I will be celebrating my 30th birthday, and my husband, who is in his mid-30s, talked about the possibility of having children. Given the physical demands of childbirth and the unpredictability of our current health, I decided to have children before reaching my mid-30s and discussed it with my husband. He recommended taking time before starting a family. If it felt overwhelming, he mentioned wanting children, but recognized that our current home was too small for a family, suggesting we think about purchasing a house. Raising children involves significant financial commitments, and purchasing a home may entail almost 3 decades of mortgage payments. By that time, my husband will probably be in his mid-60s and retired. I wanted to avoid placing any financial strain on our children. My mother balanced a full-time job with raising me, taking care of the house, and supporting my father until she retired. I always looked up to her and chose to balance work with taking care of the home. With determination, we meticulously planned for our home, selecting a builder and initiating our new home project. Luckily, we had some savings, so we opted to increase our down payment to prevent any potential mortgage difficulties down the road. Right when everything seemed to be falling into place, my husband's company went bankrupt, leaving him without a job or any severance pay. I asked him if there were any signs of the company's impending failure, but he snapped back, saying he couldn't have known since he wasn't an executive. One morning, he found himself unable to enter his workplace due to a notice announcing the company's bankruptcy the day before. It was a small company, and it appeared that the president and other responsible parties had disappeared overnight, without even leaving that month's salary. Considering the uncertain future, I proposed that we think about buying the house, but my husband was adamant about moving forward since we had already made significant progress. Because of his strong motivation to secure a new job quickly, I decided to pause the plan. He was hopeful about swiftly securing a new job. We chose to proceed with our plan after he landed a new job. He began frequenting the job center and eagerly looking for jobs online. My spouse also secured some temporary employment while searching for a permanent job, but it was on a call basis and unpredictable. His willingness to share the mortgage payments and dedication to doing so eased my mind, especially since my income was steady and we could handle things without his help for now. I've made the decision to proceed with our home project. So far, my husband may appear dedicated and responsible, but he has a peculiar obsession with his niece, the daughter of his much older sister. She became a mother at a young age, and my husband, who became an uncle early on, showered his niece with love and attention. Even though they lived far apart, during occasional visits, he would generously send expensive gifts and give her money that exceeded expectations. On one occasion, he even surprised her with a Christmas present of $1,000, which I thought was too much. When unexpected expenses arose, he chose to prioritize gifts for his niece over our budget, causing me to question his priorities. His kindness toward his niece often left me dismayed. Currently without a job, he didn't use our savings for his niece, but spent extended periods outside, supposedly looking for work, coming back home later than when he had a job. Although his enthusiasm to secure a job was admirable, he started to neglect our home project, leaving all decisions to me. He requested that I take care of all the paperwork, with the intention of having only his name on the joint ownership. I kindly prompted him to take an interest in our home, and he reacted with frustration, mentioning his exhaustion from searching for a job. I was concerned that he might later claim that because I made all the decisions, I should be accountable for the mortgage payments. When discussing payment arrangements, he preferred to maintain his personal savings until securing a job, focusing on future emergencies rather than immediate needs. He strongly suggested that I take over the mortgage payments for now, which seemed much more convenient for him than our original agreement. I asked him to sign a loan agreement for the duration I would be covering the mortgage, wanting to establish my position. He kept expressing his concerns, but eventually agreed when he understood that pushing him about his job search could cause problems. John has promised to reimburse me for half of the mortgage payments I covered while he was unemployed once he finds a new job. I managed to obtain his signature on the agreement and kept it safe in a place where he wouldn't stumble upon it. However, there were several occasions when the commitments we first made unraveled before our new home was finished. First, John, who had mentioned he would secure a job swiftly and wouldn't be selective, struggled to find employment as the completion of our new home neared. In addition, he turned down multiple offers from the temp agency he signed up with, providing different reasons. Hated the idea of supporting a husband who made no effort, so I pressed him to find a job many times, but he always dodged the issue, leading to more arguments. During this time, our new home was finished and prepared for us to move in. However, given the circumstances, the idea of moving in with John appeared challenging. Actually, I had collected different pieces of information since he lost his job, such as his ongoing struggle to secure employment. I have several things I'd like to confirm and discuss. When John was heading to the job center, I went up to him as usual. "Would you like to spend today with me?" I mentioned to him that there was something important I wanted to discuss. John attempted to steer the conversation away, emphasizing that securing a job was his main focus. He suggested discussing it later, pointing out that skipping a day at the job center wouldn't make a difference, especially since it was uncertain if he had any interviews lined up. I stood my ground, insisting that he pay attention to me. John made a bold statement. "A nagging woman isn't cute. You know what? Hey, I have something to share with you as well." I thought I could be patient, but since it's positive news, now is the perfect moment. My niece is getting married, and I've chosen to gift her the new home. We can divide the mortgage and continue making payments jointly. I was surprised by his generous gestures towards his niece in the past, but giving her a whole house, why did he decide on something so important without talking to me beforehand? This was the first time I heard about his niece's upcoming wedding. I haven't consented to this. Is this a decision you can make independently? Inquired further. After that, John threatened divorce if I disagreed. He mentioned the idea of constructing a new home, but there has been no progress so far. He was unable to find a job. However, he continued to make vague commitments about securing employment. Although his words seemed believable, his behavior did not align. I chuckled in amazement at his words, as I had already expected his outlandish idea of giving a whole house to his niece. That matter must be related, right? I was curious to see his reaction, so I asked him a lot of questions. "Are you kidding? Currently, I am not employed. You're generously giving your niece a house that still has a mortgage on it. Do you think she'd be pleased with that? How could someone think of giving away a house that we're still paying a 30-year mortgage on? Furthermore, presenting a house with an outstanding mortgage as a gift for a celebration appears to be transferring a significant financial responsibility, which is quite shocking. I'd also inquired about what this meant for our plans to start a family, considering we bought the house for when our family expands. John confidently replied to my questions, stating he wouldn't be affected by a divorce. He'd avoided answering my questions and only mentioned the possibility of divorce without providing any explanation. It felt like we were from different worlds, making conversation nearly impossible. There were several topics I had planned to talk about, but it turned out that John was more difficult than I had expected. I was considering discussing divorce, so I quickly agreed to his suggestion.
If you agree to my terms, including leaving the house and finalizing our divorce, I will listen to anything, John said. You can go ahead and file the divorce papers first, but I prefer to settle the division of property after the divorce is officially finalized. I also want to get ready for living on my own, so let's sort everything out once you calm down, I told him. John was amenable, stating he would adhere to my requests as long as he could initiate divorce proceedings right away. Actually, my intention to get ready for living alone was just an excuse. I have one more thing to take care of. I informed John that I required some time to get ready for living by myself as a tactic to delay without him catching on. After some time, I finished all my pending tasks and was just waiting for the perfect time to reach out to John. Then, maybe feeling a bit antsy or stumbling upon something, he reached out to me initially. How can I help you today? Why is our new home being listed for sale? That was meant to be a present for my niece, and it's something we both own anyway. He was upset over the phone, accusing me of selling our jointly owned home without his knowledge and refusing to listen to anything I had to say. After allowing him to express his feelings, I replied, I was aware that you were attempting to shift all the payments onto me. Did you actually believe it was still jointly owned? You seemed very eager to get a divorce. I assumed you would have double-checked that detail. When you requested joint ownership, it was arranged accordingly. But I decided to change the ownership because I was concerned that he would avoid payments and try to claim the house as his own. After the house was completed, he began acting strangely, believing he could keep his true intentions hidden. He adamantly claimed the house was for his niece, convinced that no one suspected him. I managed to pay off the entire mortgage using my savings. Little did John know, my parents had sold the land inherited from my grandfather to provide cash for a payment. My parents always preferred purchasing things outright instead of taking out loans, which they considered to be uncertain and risky. They helped me out financially so I could purchase the house outright. I had thought about taking their advice, but then John lost his job. Worried that his behavior might worsen if he found out about the money, I chose to stay quiet. Furthermore, I questioned whether he would reimburse me if I paid for everything. I refrained from informing him to avoid overshadowing my parents' kindness. John was very upset when he found out about the ownership change and blamed me for not keeping our promise about the house. Is the house still standing? Is it still intact and suitable for living? Don't worry about it if it ends up in someone else's hands. If you truly desire it, you have the option to repurchase it. I believe I had the freedom to make decisions about the house I owned outright, but residing in a home designed by an ex-spouse didn't sit well with me. John, feeling upset by my statement, asserted his entitlement to a portion of the proceeds as marital property. He requested a prompt share, ensuring to verify the exact amount later. I asked him to meet up, mentioning that I had more information to share. Arriving early at the agreed-upon location, I waited for him. When John arrived and started talking, I revealed something that caused him to stop speaking abruptly, the findings of a private investigator's investigation into his behavior. The report contained evidence of his extramarital relationship, featuring prominent photos of him kissing another woman in public, dining out at upscale restaurants, and entering hotels. It was mentioned that even though John had initially searched for a job after losing his job, he eventually started meeting the other women frequently, stating that he was single and having difficulty finding work because of the recession, which made her feel sympathetic towards him. He appealed to her sympathy and persuaded her of his financial struggles, which ultimately led her to provide him with financial assistance, behaving in a way similar to a con artist proposing marriage. I felt unwell upon discovering that he had intensified divorce discussions due to his frustration with various issues, such as the mortgage and his lack of empathy. The other woman was more accommodating and understanding, making it easier for him to control her compared to me, intending to replace me with her. The tale of giving the house was simply a strategy to speed up our divorce, an excuse he believed he could use if I declined. However, he was incorrect in believing he had influenced me. Actually, I was the one behind it all. I decided to hire a private investigator after noticing John's unusual actions and learning about his unfaithfulness. His reason for giving the house to his niece caught me off guard, but I had already made up my mind to divorce him when I found out about his affair. I wanted to chat about this issue with John before we settled into our new place. At first, I intended to talk to him about his unfaithfulness and let him know that I wanted a divorce. Despite his irrational behavior, I noticed he was unable to engage in a reasonable conversation. I chose to let him believe he was in control while I strategized my next moves behind the scenes. I confronted John with all the evidence I had gathered. I have concrete proof of your affair. Given all this evidence, it's impossible to argue your way out of it. I will be seeking compensation from you. You were aware but chose not to speak up. What sort of person does that make you, choosing to remain quiet about your spouse's unfaithfulness? Hey there, was it you who betrayed me? John's assertion of being a cherished husband was quite ridiculous, prompting me to scoff in response. He tripped over his words before reiterating his claim to a portion of the assets. That's when I decided to reach out to John's father as a final option. I let him know that John was requesting a division of assets. John began passionately explaining why I should include his father. But when I mentioned his father wanted to talk to him, he stopped abruptly. I handed the phone to John on speaker so he could hear his father reprimanding him. His father reprimanded him for his behavior, questioning how a man in his 30s could act so shamefully, and criticizing him for causing family breakdown while still demanding a share of assets. John has always had a challenging relationship with his father, finding it difficult to stand up to him since he was young. His father strongly dislikes dishonesty, especially when it involves hurting or deceiving others. After John proposed to divorce, I quickly reached out to John's father for advice, seeking assistance if I couldn't resolve it on my own. He encouraged me to leave my cheating husband and assured me he would talk to John. However, I had many things I wanted to say to John myself. Fearing he might run away if his father intervened, I chose not to speak. I wanted time after our divorce to coordinate with John's father and make sure John didn't find out about the house sale. Additionally, I wanted to clarify John's relationship with his niece and decided to call John's sister while John's father was present. I directly inquired whether her daughter had ever received expensive gifts or large sums of money from John, and she answered in the negative. John's sister noted that whenever John was invited to birthday parties, he always showed up without bringing any gifts, just inexpensive cars. My niece was completely unaware of the supposed marriage or the house gift, and she found it ridiculous and unwelcome. John's father and John's sister were also unaware of John's supposed affection for his niece. Where did all the money John said he spent on his niece disappear? John's sister proceeded to share important details about John's history. At the age of 20, he was detained during a police raid at an illegal casino. Confronted by his father's disapproval, John begged his mother to keep it between them, confessing to trading valuable items for money. Despite his pledge to stop, his addiction appeared to be pathological. John's father noticed some missing items from their storage and decided to address John's gambling habits while expressing concern for his niece. Are you using your niece as a cover for your gambling? Despite being unemployed, you still engage in gambling. He instructed John to return home for a serious re-education, emphasizing that the asset division is not intended for funding bets. John reluctantly agreed to his father's terms, giving up any rights to assets and agreeing to provide compensation. Thanks to John's father's help, a lawyer he connected me with verified that John had given up his rights to any shared property, enabling me to obtain all communal assets. Moreover, Thanks to John's father's thoughtfulness, I was given a lump sum inconvenience fee from John, which was well above the standard rate. Initially, I felt anger towards John's affair partner. However, as the investigation into John's behavior extended to her, my feelings shifted. She thought John was not in a relationship and facing financial difficulties, so she offered him financial assistance despite her own money troubles. I realized she was also being manipulated by John. Even though she was tricked, she showed regret for the possible impact on my family and tearfully said sorry. She kindly offered a small sum of money as compensation, which I declined, grateful for her sentiment. I let her know that, as another victim of John's deceit, she might be eligible for some compensation, clarifying that when someone promises marriage while also making financial demands, it could be considered fraudulent. She promptly acted on this advice. During the confrontation at John's parents' house, when she accused him of using marriage as bait, John's father became furious. He recommended that she file a police report and insisted that John surrender himself right away, which created quite a stir. John humbly asked for forgiveness from his affair partner and his father, promising to return all the money he had swindled to prevent police intervention. His limited savings were entirely used up in repaying his affair partner and handling the damages, leaving him with no money. After retiring, John's father had ample time to keep a close eye on John, enforcing strict supervision that made a prison seem lenient. John's efforts to evade the surveillance were brief. He returned to his father's doorstep within 2 days due to hunger. John's father was upset by John's indecisiveness about staying or leaving, leading him to disown John and express his disappointment. Now that the house is sold and I have the proceeds, I'm looking forward to investing in some personal rejuvenation. I secured a top-floor apartment in a building I've always dreamed of living in. I look forward to savoring the view, indulging in delicious food, and cherishing the time away from John, recognizing the years spent together.
Are you truly our child? My father's incredulous gaze met mine, scrutinizing my report card as it sprawled open before us. Growing up amidst a family of esteemed physicians, I had always assumed that following in their footsteps was my destined path. Thus, from childhood, I diligently applied myself to my studies, consistently ranking at the top of my class. Yet to my father, a doctor himself, mere excellence at a local level fell short of his expectations. In his eyes, success had to transcend the national stage to hold any true merit. Repeatedly bombarded with this lofty standard, my reverence for the medical profession gradually eroded. My name is Emily. Born to a lineage of doctors alongside my older sister, Jessica, we were the progeny expected to carry forth the family legacy. Unlike me, Jessica effortlessly excelled, basking in the favoritism of our parents. Her every accomplishment was celebrated, her slightest whim indulged. I couldn't help but envy her privileged path. Constantly measured against Jessica's towering achievements, I was consistently found lacking despite the 5-year age gap between us. My inability to mirror her successes was perceived as a personal deficiency. Over time, my parents' attention waned, diverted entirely toward Jessica's pursuits. Even in moments of stress, Jessica's verbal assaults and occasional physical outbursts went unreported for fear of disbelief. Enrolled in a prestigious college preparatory school, I harbored no aspirations of pursuing higher education. Enduring relentless verbal abuse, I made the decision to leave home, securing a part-time job to sustain myself. After graduating from high school, I found solace in employment at a tourist hotel, free from the toxic environment I once called home. 6 months passed without contact until an unexpected call shattered my solitude. "Come home for the New Year celebration," my father's voice commanded, leaving no room for negotiation. Tradition dictated the reunion of our doctor-dominated relatives, a daunting prospect for me. With the weight of familial obligation bearing down on me, I acquiesced, returning for a single day. Juggled my obligations at the hotel amidst the bustling season. At home, I was thrust into the role of the dutiful host, overseeing preparations for the annual gathering. Amidst the chaos, I questioned why this burden consistently fell upon me. Yet guilt over my divergence from the family profession kept me tethered to their expectations. Though I had hoped my departure would sever ties, my father's summons proved otherwise. For now, I would honor the familial tradition, even if it meant enduring one more painful reunion. I had meticulously planned my homecoming to be swift, using my job as a convenient excuse. However, upon arrival, my father's booming voice shattered my resolve. "You're late. Everyone's arriving soon. Why didn't you come back yesterday?" he scolded, dismissing my work obligations as mere excuses. Rushing past his reprimand, I entered a house devoid of any semblance of comfort. I dutifully carried out my assigned tasks under my mother's watchful eye, devoid of any sense of relief in returning home. As relatives gathered and festivities commenced, I remained on the periphery, a familiar outsider to familial banter. Amidst the chatter filled with hospital grievances and patient gossip, I couldn't shake the feeling that the medical profession bred nothing but contempt for others. Jessica, reveling in her superiority, mocked both colleagues and patients alike. When confronted by Christopher's taunt about my apparent failure to become a doctor, I bid back the retort bubbling within me, unwilling to engage in such draining exchanges. Under the veil of night, I made my escape from the suffocating confines of my family home. Their complaints about future chores and obligations fell upon deaf ears as I prioritized my return to work. Boarding the bus with no change of clothes, I left behind the annual charade, content to maintain the fleeting connection with my family. For 7 years, this ritual persisted unchanged. A single day of obligatory reunion. Despite my divergence from the expected path, my parents had supported me through schooling, albeit without a college degree. With each passing year, my annual visit remained a mere formality, a brief interlude in my otherwise independent life. As the familiar time of year approached once more, I braced myself for the inevitable call from my father. Yet when the phone finally rang, it wasn't his name that flashed across the screen, but an unexpected call heralding an unforeseen twist in our annual tradition. I hesitantly pressed the call button, surprised by the rare occurrence of a call from Jessica. Anxious thoughts raced through my mind as I answered, fearing the worst about our parents. However, contrary to my apprehensions, Jessica's voice came through the line with an unexpected buoyancy. "Hey, you know that young CEO from your workplace? He's been all over TV lately, haven't you noticed?" Her excitement was palpable, a stark departure from her usual demeanor. I struggled to comprehend her sudden change in attitude, unsure of where this conversation was headed. I tentatively responded, acknowledging the CEO's recent media presence due to the opening of new hotels. But before I could fully grasp the situation, Jessica eagerly interjected, expressing her interest in meeting him. "Introduce me to him. I've fallen head over heels for him ever since I saw him on TV. Plus, he's a young master, isn't he? He'd be perfect for me." Stunned into silence, I struggled to find the right words. Jessica's audacious request caught me off guard, her aspirations seemingly incongruent with reality. How could someone as arrogant as Jessica believe she could captivate the attention of someone like him? Before I could formulate a response, Jessica continued, steamrolling over any objections I might have. "You, a mere worker, probably haven't even met him, and even if you have, a plain woman like you wouldn't stand out to him." Her words cut deep, but I remained silent, unable to interject amidst her relentless monologue. As she rambled on, I attempted to interject, but Jessica's momentum was unstoppable. Her presumptuousness knew no bounds as she casually informed me of her plans to stay over when the CEO visited, confident in her ability to win him over with her beauty. I struggled to find my voice, bewildered by Jessica's audacity. "But Jessica, aren't you supposed to be considering arranged meetings for marriage? It's our family tradition to marry by 30. My feeble attempt to reason with her was met with dismissive laughter. "Traditional arrangements are so outdated, don't you think? Besides, why settle for anything less when I can aim for the top?" Her words hung in the air, leaving me speechless. As she nonchalantly requested that I cover her lodging expenses, I realized the futility of trying to reason with her. With a heavy heart, I resigned myself to the absurdity of the situation, dreading the inevitable clash between Jessica's fantasies and reality. I was taken aback by the mention of arranged meetings. Hadn't Jessica already undergone that process? The thought of it left me disheartened, knowing the limited pool of suitable candidates. Just the other day, was introduced to a third 35-year-old man as a potential match. His suitability left much to be desired, leaving me with a sinking feeling. Observing Jessica's disdain for her arranged meeting partners only added to my disappointment. But her contempt for tradition didn't mean I was obligated to introduce her to Alexander. I firmly informed her it wasn't feasible and ended the call. A month later, I begrudgingly returned home for New Year's Day, intending to fulfill my familial duties before making a swift exit. However, this year my relatives seemed unusually fixated on my employment at a hotel. Working at a hotel, Emily? I'm surprised you can handle such a menial job, Christopher remarked, echoed by Mom's impressed tone about my ability to manage a job deemed less essential than theirs. Even Dad chimed in, expressing relief that my absence spared him from neighborhood gossip. The weight of their collective disappointment washed over me, confirming what I already knew. I was considered an embarrassment. Jessica's laughter only added insult to injury, her mockery cutting deep. But her words ignited a fire within me. In that moment, I shed the facade of compliance and unleashed pent-up emotions. Jessica, you're 30 years old, 5 years my senior. What's your plan? With such lofty expectations, you'll find yourself left behind, I retorted, fueled by frustration. My outburst incited fury from Dad, demanding an apology, yet their unwavering support for Jessica remained unchanged. She was their golden child, and I was merely an afterthought. If that was to be my reality, then so be it. I longed for our family of 3 to remain together forever, but the reality was far from my wishful thinking. Despite Daddy's escalating rage, I sighed inwardly, knowing my sentiments would only stoke his anger further. What's with that attitude? Who do you think raised you? Daddy's voice boomed, punctuated by Mom's solemn nodding. The echoes of their disapproval were mirrored by the relatives, their collective consensus a suffocating weight upon me. Fed up with the suffocating atmosphere, I braced myself to speak, only to be met with Daddy's cutting remark branding me a failure who brought shame upon our family. His mocking expression fueled my resolve as I gathered my belongings, ready to depart. I won't be returning after this year, I declared firmly, my words hanging in the air as I made my way to the exit. Expressing gratitude for everything up until now, I stepped outside, the weight of my decision settling upon me. As I reached the door, the sound of a car pulling up outside caught my attention. Peering out, I spotted a luxury car parked nearby. My parents and Jessica emerged, their curiosity piqued by the arrival. To my surprise, the driver was none other than Alexander, the president of my company, the very person Jessica had urged me to introduce. With a smile, I apologized for the delay, explaining that I was just leaving. It's about time, Alexander replied, his smile hinting at an understanding that transcended words. With a casual farewell, I left my stunned family behind, their shock palpable as Alexander approached Daddy, leaving me to wonder about the unforeseen turn of events. I apologized for the delayed greeting, I began before leaning in close to Alexander. He's my fiancé. We're getting married next month. The announcement hung in the air, met with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Huh. Was that Jessica's voice, my parents, or both? I chuckled, though my intention to invite them to the wedding was non-existent. With no lingering attachment to this house, I doubted I'd ever return. It became evident that this wasn't the place for me, after all. After Alexander's proposal, I felt compelled to explain my situation to him, shedding light on the strained dynamic within my family. Their understanding was immediate, especially after hearing about the hospital's tarnished reputation, a subject Jessica had also broached. Ignoring my family's stunned reactions, I continued divulging my involvement in a new hotel project near Daddy's hospital. During local research, unsettling truths about Daddy's place surfaced: multiple medical malpractices and scams. Daddy's face paled at the revelation, and I couldn't help but question his involvement. "Are you sure it's okay?" I pressed, referencing Jessica's association with the hospital as well. According to locals, their reputations were the worst, a damning reflection on our family. The weight of the situation settled heavily upon us. It was like father, like daughter, as the phrase referring to Daddy and Jessica hung in the air, casting a shadow over our family integrity. Feeling somewhat responsible, I expressed my determination to succeed in the hotel business and restore faith within the community. In stark contrast, Daddy and Jessica appeared visibly shaken, their once assured fates crumbling under the weight of scrutiny and realization. I confided everything in my fiancé, Alexander, who, without unnecessary interruption, simply opened the passenger door. Our paths had crossed right after I left home, under the previous president's administration. Alexander, the future president, worked alongside me in the field, and our camaraderie blossomed into a close friendship. It was later revealed that he fell in love with me at first sight. In stark contrast to past experiences of being overlooked, my hard work was finally recognized and appreciated. I took pleasure in my efforts, and Alexander seemed to admire that quality. When the opportunity arose, he stepped up as president after the previous one fell ill and proposed to me 6 months ago. His request for my support resonated deeply with me. Since accepting his proposal, I've delved into various areas of study, particularly focusing on business. Discovered a newfound enjoyment in learning, realizing that my aversion wasn't to studying itself, but rather to the narrow path I felt pressured to follow in becoming a doctor. Each new subject I explored only fueled my curiosity further. As I prepared to step into the car, Daddy's voice pierced the air with a familiar question, but with a smile, I calmly declared, "I'm no longer a daughter of this house. Goodbye." With that, I left my bewildered family behind, the car silently whisking me away. In the wake of the successful opening of the new hotel, I found myself engrossed in on-site management from day one. When the establishment reached full occupancy, my parents and Jessica made an unexpected appearance. Daddy, spotting me amidst the bustle, called out, signaling their intention to stay. Despite my busy schedule, I found myself at a loss for words. Before I could react, Alexander intervened swiftly, escorting my family away. However, their stubborn persistence caused a scene in the lobby, leaving me torn between professional obligations and familial tensions. Feeling stuck in the midst of chaos, I sought assistance from a security guard to quell the escalating tension. Shortly after, a woman named Olivia entered the lobby, recognizing me as a teacher who relayed the gossip to me. The rumors spread like wildfire throughout the hospital, causing embarrassment for Daddy and Jessica. Meanwhile, I stumbled upon a startling revelation about Mom's purported retirement. It turned out to be a cover-up for her forced resignation due to a scandal, a tidbit of information I accidentally overheard from Olivia. Frustrated by my family's repeated audacity, I took decisive action during their unwelcome visit to my workplace, promptly calling the police for obstruction of business. Their past behavior soon became the talk of the hospital, exacerbating its already dire financial situation. Eventually, the hospital was forced to close its doors, a consequence of the scandal and ensuing rumors. Not long after, passing by my family's former home, I noticed its vacancy, a poignant sign of their financial distress. Rumors circulated about Jessica's failed matchmaking endeavors, perhaps spurred by the local gossip that ultimately drove them away. With a changed phone number and no intention of reconnecting, I severed ties with my family for good. With the successful launch of the new hotel and my upcoming wedding to Alexander, both my professional and personal life are on an upward trajectory, brighter than ever before. Mom, I can't continue living like this. With Ethan and his mom barely letting me eat, suddenly an SOS call came from my once cheerful daughter, Alana. "Alana, come back home." I instinctively shouted. Alana had become worryingly thin. "I will forgive Ethan and his mother," I resolved with determination. "I'm Jan, a 50-year-old housewife. My husband James is 52 and works for a company. Our daughter is turning 26, and after graduating from college, she landed a job at a major corporation and started to live alone. James and I were enjoying our life as a couple after Alana moved out. Although Alana was successful in her job, she was shy around men and hesitant in relationships. So when she got a boyfriend, James and I were overjoyed. James kept urging Alana to bring him over, saying, "What's he like? Bring him home sometime." I cautioned James, "Honey, don't push her. She'll introduce him when she's ready. Let's wait patiently." Alana just smiled. Soon, Alana said she'd bring Ethan over. I complained to Ethan, and she playfully told James, "Dad, you kept insisting." I complained to Ethan, and he agreed to come over to meet us but said, "Don't say anything weird to Ethan, okay?" James was visibly delighted when Ethan came to greet us. James and I were nervous. However, Ethan's friendly conversation soon eased our tension. Ethan introduced himself to James and me. "Hello. I'm Ethan Smith, and I'm seriously dating Alana with the intention of marrying her." Alana blushed and said, "Marrying me? You're embarrassing me. You said it was just a casual greeting." James happily told Alana, "No, it's great that he's thinking about the future." "Ethan, I entrust Alana to you," James said. Their relationship progressed smoothly with our blessing, and Ethan proposed formally 5 months later. Seeing a blushing but happy Alana made both James and me very happy. I heard Ethan worked for a major bank systems company. James and I discussed how their future seemed secure. As wedding preparations began, Alana frequently sought advice, and one day she asked me, "Hey, Mom, how much is the market price for a wedding ring?" "Ethan is planning to buy one for about $10,000. Surprised, I replied, "For wedding rings, maybe about $2,500 each for the couple. I've heard engagement rings are around $3,500. Alana seemed a bit uneasy. "Right, I thought so too," she said. After asking around and reading magazines, I felt Ethan's sense of money was odd. However, when Alana said Ethan insists it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing and wants me to have something nice, I conveniently interpreted it as Ethan wanting to give her a special gift. After some time, the two moved out of their bachelor's residence and into a condominium in New York. The area was very expensive but very convenient for commuting. I was a little concerned and said to Alana, "Hey, Alana, the area you and Ethan live in must be pretty expensive to rent, right? Are you going to be able to afford the monthly payments?" She reassured me, "Don't worry, Mom. Ethan's working hard and earns a decent salary too. His job requires living near the bank. Ethan is a systems engineer at a bank systems company. If there is a problem, Ethan needs to rush to the site even in the middle of the night. That's why the location had to be close to the bank, within a short taxi ride. Apparently, Ethan's company gives a substantial housing allowance, so we're fine. Don't worry, Mom." Not fully understanding the company's situation, I nodded. I simply accepted it as the way things were. Months passed and I invited Alana for lunch before her marriage. Alana and I used to frequently enjoy lunch outings together. However, after her marriage, when I extended the invitation, she often declined, citing work commitments or prior plans. James suggested that perhaps she was just busy with her new married life, but it didn't feel like Alana was simply occupied. Over the phone, Alana agreed to join me for lunch the following Saturday, mentioning that Ethan would be on a business trip. "Sure, Mom, I can make it. I'll find a place for us," she said. I was thrilled at the prospect of having lunch with my daughter after half a year. When I finally saw Alana, she appeared somewhat pale. Concerned, I asked her what was wrong and suggested she take it easy if she wasn't feeling well. "No, I'm fine," Alana reassured me. "I've just been tired from overtime lately. Plus, lunch with you might be just what I need to unwind." She managed a weak smile, and we enjoyed a good chat for about 2 hours. Suddenly, Alana's phone rang, and she looked shocked when she saw the display. She told me, "Mom, I have to go home already. Ethan's mother is calling." Alana explained that Ivy, Ethan's mother, was at their place. Surprised, I'd apologized for keeping her during such a busy time, and she hurriedly left. Another half hour passed, and during this time, something terrible happened to Alana. I learned about it from a phone call from her. It was a sad day, and James and I were enjoying our day off. While I was making tea, my phone rang, displaying Alana's name. I quickly answered, but Alana seemed hesitant. "Mom, it's me," she began. Hi. I. She struggled to continue. Sensing her distress, I asked, "What's the matter? Did something happen?" Alana remained silent for a while, and I patiently waited for her to speak. Eventually she said, "Ma, I can't live like this anymore. Ethan and his mom barely let me eat. I might not survive if this continues." Shocked, I listened intently, my heart sinking at her words. "Are you okay? It sounds like things are really bad. Why didn't you come back home?" I asked Alana, concerned. She seemed undecided. I firmly told her, "If you're feeling unwell, you can just sit around. Alana, come back home. We'll talk it over when you get here." Alana responded, "Really? Can I come back? But I don't have any money. I can't leave." I thought this was strange. Alana was earning a decent salary, but there was no time for a long discussion. Her situation sounded serious. First, I need to meet with Alana to see how she is doing, I told myself. Take only your valuables with you and leave the house. There's a convenience store near your apartment, right? I will drive there and pick you up. Wait for me there, I instructed Alana, who agreed, sobbing. James and I hurried to the convenience store. When we arrived, Alana was crouched in the parking lot. Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done this," she said, breaking down into tears. I hugged Alana, and together with James, we helped her into the car. She was terribly thin and almost gray in complexion. What could have happened to her? I was astonished. "We'll not be able to come down here. Let's take her home soon and give her a good rest." "We need to talk to Ethan," James said. "I agree," I said. "Yes, right now. Letting Alana rest is our top priority." When we arrived home, Alana, possibly due to exhaustion, immediately fell asleep on the sofa. After she woke up, I served her some easy-to-eat food. She ate voraciously in front of us. She must have been very hungry. It was shocking to hear her stories about not being allowed to eat and having no money. "What do you mean you're not allowed to eat?" I asked. Alana explained, "My salary is lower than Ethan's, so Ethan and his mom, Ivy, keep telling me to save more. Gradually, my food portions were reduced." "Really? But you're making the food, right? Because you're a married couple, and you eat the same food, right?" I inquired. Alana shook her head. "No, for the past 6 months, Ivy has been cooking Ethan's meals. I'm not even allowed in the kitchen." James asked, "Ivy is in your house? This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Does this mean Ivy is staying there all the time?" Alana explained that Ivy had moved in with them about 6 months ago, and they started living together gradually. Right around the time Alana and I had lunch, Ivy had an argument with her husband and came to stay with Ethan for just a week. But then Ethan got mad at his father and told Ivy she could stay indefinitely. I was shocked and glanced at James, who seemed to feel the same. Alana continued, "Since then, Ivy has been criticizing my budgeting, saying it's all wrong and that I can't manage money at all. After Ivy criticized the budget, she took control of the household finances. Moreover, Ethan did not oppose Ivy at all and instead joined her in blaming me. Now I'm controlling Ethan's and my entire salary," Alana said. Ivy saw Alana's pay slip and demanded she work more, including overtime, Alana told us. Ethan also told Alana, "Yes, that's right. I'd agree. With more overtime, it's nice to have my mom doing the housework. You're lucky. Ivy scrutinized Alana's pay slips, always looking for unnecessary expenses. Eventually, she found something else to criticize: the cafeteria deductions. Alana's company has a cafeteria, and lunch costs are deducted from her salary. Ivy told Alana, "You're spending too much on lunch. I'll make you a lunchbox from now on. Stop eating at the cafeteria." Alana's attempts to argue were met with attacks from both Ivy and Ethan. Whenever I try to speak up, Ivy and Ethan gang up on me. It never ends up being a calm discussion, Alana confided. My thoughts are suppressed by Ivy and Ethan. Now Ethan and Ivy control all of my salary, leaving me with almost no money of my own. When I wanted to go to the hair salon, Ivy called it extravagant and reluctantly gave me money. Ivy also complained about my makeup being too expensive, telling me to buy cheaper products. Alana can't even buy new clothes, but Ivy never complains about Ethan spending. Ethan seems to spend money lavishly. Alana began to sob as she recalled these painful events. James and I listened in disbelief. Then Alana's phone rang. She flinched and turned pale. I instinctively answered the phone for her. It was Ivy. "So, isn't this Alana's phone?" I wondered. "Why is Johnny answering?" Ivy asked. I replied, "Hello, it's been a while. Alana is not feeling well. I can talk to you on her behalf." Ivy said, "Is that so? Well, all right. Could you tell Alana to come back home soon?" I replied, "Unfortunately, I can't do that. Alana is unwell, she'll stay here until she recovers." Ivy retorted, "You're coddling her too much. As a mother, you should educate her properly. She can't manage a budget or do household chores. It's always one problem after another." Struggling to find the right words, I remained silent. Then Ivy changed the topic, asking, "So Alana will be commuting to work from your home?" I replied, "Yes, considering her health. We'll need to discuss this with her company, but for now, she'll be commuting from here." Ivy then said, "Please tell Alana to return as soon as she's well." I responded, "Excuse me, Ivy, but I think it's necessary for us, including Ethan, to have a discussion about the future living arrangements." Ivy snorted and said, "Fine. We can talk anytime." Before hanging up, I couldn't understand why Ivy was so confident, but at least Alana was safe for now. We needed to focus on her health and plan our next steps. That night, after Alana went to sleep, James and I discussed the situation. The next day, Alana was examined at a hospital. As expected, she was underweight and not sleeping well. After talking with her, we decided she should take a leave of absence from work. She enjoyed my cooking, saying it was delicious. I asked her, "What were you eating while living with Ethan? What kind of meals did Ivy prepare for you?" Alana said, "My mother-in-law only cooks for Ethan and herself. I always had bread ends from a local bakery. They sell bread ends very cheaply. That's what I used to eat." I was shocked. Alana had been deprived of proper meals while Ivy and Ethan ate normally. Just bread ends. Since when? What about your lunchbox? Didn't I prepare that too? I asked. Alana replied, "I should have stopped eating at the company cafeteria. Ivy has been making my lunchbox just bread ends in a container for the past 3 months. Feeling embarrassed, I resorted to eating secretly in the break room when no one was around." Alana confided that Ivy had taught her about not earning as much as Ethan, insinuating that with her salary, bread ends were all she deserved. She had been surviving on just bread ends for 3 months. I was shocked, and James, who overheard everything, couldn't hide his surprise. Alana, tired from sharing, lay down to rest. James expressed concern. "This is serious. We need to investigate further. If Ethan or Ivy calls again, give me some time to gather more information." I agreed. "Yes, I think this is going too far." James and I began looking into Alana's circumstances. I started by calling her work colleague, who mentioned that recently Alana had been doing a lot of overtime and looked pale. She often declined after-work drinks, citing her husband and meal as reasons. James also spoke to Alana's boss, who commented, "I've been concerned about Alana lately because she's been doing too much overtime. She seemed desperate to work. Alana is so conscientious. Maybe she's been pushing herself too hard. I hope she recovers soon and comes back to us." Thanks to her boss's initiative, Alana was granted sickness allowance by her company. It was 2/3 of her salary, and we were grateful to receive it. We decided to have the sickness allowance paid into a different account from her usual salary account. 2 weeks after Alana returned home, Ethan called. He insisted that Alana should be well by now. When I looked at James, he answered the phone. James humbly requested, "Ethan, Alana is not fully recovered yet. Please let her rest for another week." Ethan told James over the phone, "I guess there's no choice. Just one more week, okay?" and then hung up. I protested to James, but she needs at least 3 more weeks to recover, and we don't know what they'll do to her if she goes back. James reassured me, "Don't worry. We won't stick to the 1-week timeline. They've treated her terribly, and we have a plan." He then asked Alana, "What do you want to do? If you want to try again with Ethan, we won't stop you. But if you want to leave him, we'll support you." Alana suddenly became resolute, saying, "I've been thinking. Am I really as useless as Ivy and Ethan say? This isn't right. They're just taking my money. I don't want this anymore. I want a divorce," Alana declared. James encouraged her, saying, "That's right. You've chosen your path. We'll always be on your side." James shared the information he had gathered with us as we prepared for the possibility of Ethan coming over, ready to handle the situation. 1 week passed and we didn't contact Ethan. 9 days later, Ethan and Ivy came to visit. When the doorbell rang, I checked the intercom and informed Alana and James. James suggested, "Let's talk to them directly and settle this." Alana nodded in agreement. Opening the door, we found Ethan and Ivy glaring at us. Calming myself, I greeted them warmly. "Hello. What brings you here so suddenly?" Ethan demanded, "Why hasn't Alana returned home? It's been a week. You did tell her, right?" Ivy chimed in. "That's right. You can do your chores, you can do your laundry, and you can even keep your promise to come home. What a mess. You, our parents and children, are helpless." I invited them in, saying, "Let's not talk in the doorway. Please come inside." Reluctantly, they entered. Alana told them firmly, "I won't return to that house. Ethan, please, let's divorce. I can't live with you anymore." Ethan threatened loudly, "You think you can just decide that?" But Alana stood her ground, facing Ethan with resolve. Ivy then berated Alana, "For 6 months, I did all the housework and supported Ethan while you neglected your duties." Alana told Ivy, "It's not that I didn't do the chores. Whenever I did, you would criticize my methods and take over the tasks, didn't you?" Ivy retorted, "How dare you speak to me like that after making me work so hard? You should be ashamed. I was only trying to correct your mistakes." Ethan joined in, "That's right. My mother helped because you couldn't handle the chores, allowing you to focus on work." That's when James shouted at them, "What nonsense. You took Alana's salary and fed her only bread ends. Your actions are the worst kind of abuse." They were shocked by James's outburst. James added, "Ethan, you have been fired from your company. I checked your employment status. You don't have the power to continue paying the rent on that apartment anymore, do you?" Ethan began to look uneasy. Alana added, "I didn't know until Dad told me." James continued, "I hired a detective to find out. Ethan, you were fired 6 months ago for an affair with your boss's wife." Alana accused Ethan, "You pushed me to work because you lost your job and income." Ethan turned pale and hung his head. James then confronted Ivy, "You have a shopping addiction. That's right. You didn't leave your home due to a fight but because you were divorced and had nowhere to go." Ivy lost composure and turned pale. James concluded, Ethan is being sued for alimony, and Ivy is being chased by debt collectors. They were trying to pass their debts onto Alana. Trembling with anger, Alana placed a piece of paper on the desk. Once and for all, let's divorce. I filled out half of the divorce form. You complete it and submit it to the authorities. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. Prostrating at Alana's feet on the carpet, Ethan pleaded, "Please don't say we should divorce. It was just a moment of madness. I was wrong to hide it from you. You're all I have, Alana. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." Ethan pleaded while Ivy, also appealing to Alana, cried, "I did all the housework and took care of everything, didn't I? I'm sorry. Please come back. I'll keep doing the chores." Alana, looking at Ethan and Ivy coldly, said, "I'm fed up. Who would want to start over with you two? You hid what you did and exploited my salary. I don't want to see your faces." Ethan and Ivy were unable to move from their spot, crying inconsolably. James sternly told them, "The conversation is over. It's time for you to leave. If you don't, we have our ways to deal with it." Reluctantly, Ethan and Ivy stood up and left our home, defeated. Afterwards, with a lawyer's help, Alana and Ethan officially divorced. Of course, we filed for alimony from Ethan. In addition to hiding his affair, we also added the fact that Ethan did not provide adequate meals to Alana in the alimony claim. We had a doctor's diagnosis which served as conclusive evidence against Ethan. Ethan had to move out of the apartment and live in a cheaper one with Ivy. Now he works day and night to pay the alimony to Alana, and Ivy, not working, has become the target of Ethan's anger. They constantly fight. Our lawyer informed us about Ethan and Ivy's current situation. Alana fully recovered and returned to work. She seems to be enjoying her work more than ever. She apologized to me and James, saying, "I'm sorry for the divorce and coming back home. Thank you for all your help with the divorce. I'll be staying here for a while." I comforted her, saying, "Divorce doesn't matter. The fact that you're alive and well is all that matters to us." James added, "Don't overdo it. You're a hard worker, and sometimes you keep things to yourself too much." Alana admitted, "I should have talked to you both sooner. I'd to handle too much on my own." Seeing Alana's smile return was truly heartwarming, and James, who stood by us and fought against Ethan and Ivy, proved to be incredibly reliable. I felt for him all over again. When I told him, he joked, "Then how about showing your gratitude with food? Make my favorite pork cutlets tonight." As a family, we've overcome difficulties and will surely face more in the future. But with James and Alana by my side, I want us to support